It's good to see friends and families in this place. And as we celebrate Thanksgiving, let's just be reminded that God is so good in our lives. Today especially, we all have the sermon passages and the points together, all the same for all of the worship, starting from children, youth, the Korean worship, and also for the English worship as well. As a church, one united body, I think it's good that we are reminded that we are to be grateful. And I pray that through this message today that we will be blessed in our hearts, that we will be challenged. So last week, Jason, he's our son. He turned 2 years old. He started talking a lot of words, putting 2 or 3 words together, and he's been such a joy in our family. And he either he knows Appa, like Oma, Imo, Samchon, and then he knows Kyohe, which is church, and Koja, which is like to sleep, you know. And he puts these 2 together. Appa Kyohe, like dad is at church, or Oma Koja, like mom is sleeping kind of thing. So I think he learned at a very young age. He learned very fast, still very young. I think that's not appropriate, but he has learned to pick up on his on speaking and talking a lot. So he's been a joy in our family. And as I am seeing him as a dad, I think of how this child will grow as a person, as a man of God. And I was thinking what kind of gifts he will have, what kind of abilities this boy would have. Maybe skills in craftsmanship. He likes to probably make something. Maybe he's infatuated in anatomy, human anatomy. Maybe he wants to be a doctor one day. Or maybe he wants to be a warm-hearted shepherd. Maybe a missionary, a pastor. Or someone who's very logical, critical, and can give advice to other people. Or anyone. Or someone who can do business or anything. So I'm thinking, what is these abilities that we want to give our children, or even in our lives? And as I was just preparing for this sermon, there is this survey. It's called World Values Survey, which began in 1981. And this is a conducted study, and there are many different countries, and for 20-something years now, that this is an indicator that shows where people have different thoughts and mindsets and where they put their values on. So, the most recent survey, it's the 7th wave, or wave 7. This was published 4 years ago. And there has been a lot of this survey has been tracked, the flow of values, revealing what is more important in a person in a specific country. And interesting thing is, the United States and Korea have very similar perspectives in one area. And on the other hand, Germany and China has something similar as well. So the question was asked, do you think money or income should be equal, or should there be greater differences based on the ability of an individual? So the US and Korea hold the value that the money, the income that you can have should differ based on your skills, your ability. And perhaps that's the reason why we are living in a world, especially in the US and in the Korean society, very accustomed to evaluating people on their performances, right? And one of the things that happened is, remember where there was the time where IQ, like intellectual ability, was very important in a person, right? And I remember myself, my IQ score was significantly lower than other people, and I was really worried that, oh, what should I do? Like, And it kind of felt like I had less ability and less skills on solving problems. And there was at that time where IQ scores were very important, but as people moved on, the shift was focused into emotional quotient, which is the emotional intelligence, a person being more emphatic to others. So there was that shift from IQ, because there was a lot of people who had high IQ but were very antisocial and lacked social skills. So it became clear that it's just not just intelligence, but it's also the skill and ability on how to live harmoniously with other people. Now, as a society has been forming together, today we know that IQ, EQ, and other skills, other abilities are important in our lives. There's one thing that we want to emphasize today is the ability to be grateful. 감사할 수 있는 능력. It's the ability and skills, or the mindset, or I would say the faith of learning how to be thankful in our lives, grateful in our lives. In today's passage, we encounter 10 lepers. These lepers, when they saw Jesus Christ, they cried out, asking for mercy, asking for healing. And Jesus, moved with compassion, instructed them to go to the priest to show themselves. And as these 10 lepers were going on their way, they obeyed Jesus' words, and as even before they presented themselves to the priest, all of them were cleansed of their leprosy. Everybody was healed. And the real story begins here. Although 10 received the same grace, and all was healed of that leprosy, only one of them returned. Only one of them returned to Jesus to express gratitude. So this person who came back to give thanks, Jesus spoke these precious words. And this in verse 19, that rise and go on your way, your faith has made you well. And Jesus doesn't talk about his the ability or anything else, no performance that he did, no actions that made him to be healed. But Jesus said that the faith of the leper made him well. And this kind of made me to think, why did Jesus use the word faith? Why is it not obedience, or why is it not something else? This leper did not perform any actions other than expressing gratitude, right? But that expression of gratitude itself was considered an act of faith in front of Jesus' eyes. To Jesus, that expression of gratitude was an act of faith. So Jesus regarded that act of expressing thankfulness. He said that was faith itself, and his thankfulness, the leper's thankfulness for being healed, was his faith. Brothers and sisters, faith can be manifested in various forms, and in today's passage, faith is revealed through the action of giving gratitude or being grateful. So a person who can be grateful is a person of faith. So Jesus says that all things are possible for one who believes. I want to ask you this question today. Do you have that faith to express gratitude in your life? Because a lot of times, if we don't go further, if we do not make that leap of faith, it's very hard for us to actually express that gratitude. All of those 9 lepers, they were all healed at the same time, but those 9 people, they did not have that faith to acknowledge Jesus Christ as their Savior and healer. So the ability to be thankful, that's something that we want to focus on today, for what has been given to us and for the grace we have received through faith. So I want to ask you, do you have the faith? Do you guys express that gratitude thinking that, oh, this is an action that I do contrary to my fleshly desires? And I bless us today, this morning, that we will grow in faith by giving thanks to God for what we have already been received from Him. And let us be grateful for all the things that He's given us. Jesus told this leper, your faith has made you well. And Jesus said that it was his ability to give thanks that saved him, right? So, what made this leper, this one man, different from the others? And what enabled him to return to Jesus after him being healed? And what gave him this ability to be thankful, which the others did not have? So as we reflect on these questions, I pray that we will draw lessons of faith on how we can cultivate this heart of thankfulness today. I want to ask this one question. How should we show gratitude, or how should we be thankful? And we should be thankful. We should give thanks for being delivered from despair. We should give thanks to God, remembering what He has done in our lives. And for the leper, God has rescued him from that despair that he had. We kind of see the background of this man. This leper who returned to Jesus, bowed down, expressed his gratitude, and was able to have a heart of knowing, of showing, expressing faith and grace and thanksgiving. And he felt it more than anyone else. Even when the same grace is given to other people, some people regard it very significant to themselves and they respond with gratitude, while others treat it lightly and fail to see the miracle that happened in their life, and they fail to feel thankful. So in today's passage, this leper who expressed this gratitude to Jesus deeply recognized the value of Jesus' love and that grace and that free gift that he received. And this was because before he met Jesus, his life was filled with despair, with entire disparity, without any hope. His life was marked with wounds, with pain, more than anyone else. Because there was two characteristics in his life. The passage mentions that he was distinct from the other 9 people, especially highlighting his background in the passage. It says that this man understood what it meant to be delivered because he had a very desperate and broken state before the actual healing happened. So to deeply cultivate gratitude, we must first reflect on where and how we were rescued. And from there, recognize that the greatness of God's love being given to us in times of our hopelessness. It says on verse 16 that this man, he fell on the face of Jesus, and Jesus' feet giving thanks. And it says that he was a Samaritan. As you guys know, this life, what kind of a life does Samaritans live? As a Samaritan, probably his life was likely filled with challenges and pain, because Samaritans were mixed race people. When Assyria attacked Israel, he took out all the people, and Babylon attacking Judah, taking everybody away from that country. And when the people who were staying there, who conquered or came back to that land, started to live there, and they started to marry other people so that they can actually live, to survive. So the Samaritans are now the people, the mixed race people, who was despised by the Orthodox or the typical Jews. Although they were worshiping same God, and they were, as the Jews did, they did so many things that they were seen as strange or different people. So the Jews were not comfortable with Samaritans, as you guys know, and they were saying that they were Gentiles. And perhaps, maybe we're thinking of Christians today and viewing other people, the people who believe other things like cults and heretical groups. That was the relationship that the Samaritans and the Jews had. So simply being a Samaritan, not being able to belong in a place, they were all living in Samaria together, but especially this leper, because he had that disease, he was outcast. This man contracted leprosy while living in Samaria, so there was a stigma far worse than physical diseases, compared to any other diseases, the flesh decaying. This was the curse directly from God. And people were horrified, and they did not want to have them in their community. So this Samaritan, this leper, his life was marked like double suffering, social rejection of being a Samaritan, and the physical and spiritual rejection he had as he had leprosy. So, just a compound of all hopelessness. He did not see anything. He was outcast from his hometown. He was abandoned. Now, living with other lepers outside of Samaria. Probably there were some Orthodox Jews, non-Orthodox Jews, but they were all lepers. So they were all outcasts. All very living in sorrow. And they were living in this town. And in verse 12 it says, Jesus, as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers. Jesus going into this town. Jesus was traveling from Galilee to Jerusalem, and he entered this village. And this village was not a Samaritan village. So we know that this leper was expelled already. He was not living in Samaria because Samaritan community was so small. They had difficulty isolating it in one place, so they entirely cast him out. One way or the other, he was isolated, now living with other lepers in the community. Now Jesus is in his town. To give you a better idea of what lepers felt on their life, their background, as we were sharing the Old Testament for 7 weeks, there is a story in the Old Testament where there were 4 lepers. I think lepers, they just all gathered together because they are hopeless, they need company. So they had no food, and they're gonna die anyways. So they go into surrender into the Syrian army. So they were thinking, these 4 were gathering together and they said, okay, the Syrian army, if they accept us, at least we will have food and we will survive. We won't starve. But if they kill us, still that's better because we're going to die in hunger anyways. So that's kind of like the background. That's kind of like the mindset they had. So this 10 lepers living together, thinking of, we're going to die anyways. But Jesus comes. They're so marginalized. The Samaritans already carried the pain. They're marginalized. On top of that, they had leprosy. So this man, utterly broken, rejected by his families, his relatives, his community, his life was complete abandonment. Now, in the midst of this hopelessness, Jesus enters this village. And the only hope they could have was Jesus himself. They ran to Jesus. And he was met by 10 lepers. So it was subjective. Jesus was met by 10 lepers. They were so desperate. Of course, 10 of them, all of them were desperate, but not like the Samaritan leper who had all the background of being broken, being abandoned, having much hopelessness. Now meeting Jesus Christ, them crossing path, it was not an accident, right? This was not a sudden thing. Jesus was intentionally passing in that town because he knew that these lepers did not have much place to roam, to go freely and move around, because they were already isolated in their hometowns and even in their own community. So they were only coming together as 10 people living together, and they were stuck in that town. So there was 0% if Jesus was not intentional when he was passing by. But Jesus being intentional, and them seeing the Lord, they were able to meet Jesus not because they were looking for him, but Jesus was coming to them. So in their state, afflicted, having this dreadful disease, isolated, awaiting death, they had to seek Jesus. They had to go to him. And Jesus saying, without anything, without any cause, without anything that they had, any performance that need to show, Jesus just say that go to the priest. And as they were going, they were already healed. All 10 lepers in their hopelessness met Jesus and experienced grace. And when Jesus approached them, they didn't miss the opportunity to cry out for mercy. But even though all of these 10 people received the same grace, only one person valued that grace more than anyone else. And Samaritan leper. Because the pain he experienced in the past made him, enabled him, made him to have that ability to value grace more than anyone else. And it was because of his past pain, upon that reception of grace, he was able to express that gratitude. So he remembered his time of despair. And on top of that, he realized who Jesus was and who healed him. So his past suffering, all of the times that he was in despair, that became a foundation for him to have that heart of thankfulness. So brothers and sisters, how can we apply this in our lives? Maybe in our lives, maybe a lot of us have experienced some form of pain, and you think of that as something that you want to hide, something that you don't want to show to other people. You might isolate yourself. And some people allow such pain to consume them, surrounding themselves with walls. And they're bitter. They reveal thorns outwardly, not wanting to welcome others. And they build defenses out of their pain. But not everyone who expresses pain lives this way, right? And God allows pain in our past not to abandon us, not to give us a hard time, but to shape us, to give us God's own heart. So we need to remember, are these pain, are these sufferings letting me devour myself in sadness, in isolation? Is it consuming me, making me more bitter and raising these walls? Or am I allowing God to use this past pains so that it will be a foundation of when we do receive grace later on, even today and in the future, that we will show that expression of gratitude to our Lord Jesus Christ and to our God. So instead of living a life with regret, brothers and sisters, of those past wounds we had, we should allow these experiences to deepen our gratitude as we experience God's grace that we receive daily. So I bless you to live a life remembering this gratitude, thinking of pain. Of course, it's painful, but it's in the past. And give that chance and change it into a form of grace, expressing that gratitude. God said that He will reap what we sow, right? When we face challenges in our lives, I pray and I bless you now that we will not sow seeds of complaining, resentment, negative mindset, or the heart of giving up, but I pray that we will have that grace as we are in difficult times, that we will see and sow good things, not negative things or despair, but we will sow the miracles of God. Because as we have those foundations of our past experiences, the seeds will grow and we will reap as we have a heart of expressing gratitude to our God each day. So let me ask you a question and then I will end. Do we have this faith? Just like Christ said to the leper, your faith has healed you. Do we have this faith to thank God for what He has done for our lives? And it is believing that God will change and mold us every step of the way that we can have this faith, and it will lead into things, thankfulness, showing gratitude and being grateful. So brothers and sisters, let us choose to sow. Let us choose to plant thanksgiving in our lives. Let's plant the heart of gratefulness in our lives, trusting that God will work on these miracles far beyond our expectations. Let's pray.